Hey guys, Matt Brown here. Welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm here with my normal co-host, my favorite person to talk to, Dr. Andrew Vallo. And we've seen in the reviews you guys have asked to bring back State of the Startup so you guys can track Andrew's progress. So we're going to start bringing back State of the Startup. And it's going to be a segment that's somehow on the regular based on him doing startups. Andrew has gotten aggressive the last 6 months, and we're going to 10 to 14 practice. We're going from 10 to 14 practices now. And sometimes I talk to Andrew and it's like, nah, I think I'm good. I'm focusing on the 10 or 11 I have. Then 3 weeks later, a month later, he goes, we're doing 12, 13, and 14. And I'm like, so much for focusing on the ones we have. I think Andrew can't sit still and he's aggressive and I think you like the building part more than the running part. I don't know. I think you do. I think you like love finding diamonds in the rough and these like shell practices or these reboots or these like undervalued spaces. I kind of feel like for you, it's like most people say this can't be done. And I think you love doing it and being like, well, I did it 14 times in a row. And it's kind of like you showing the world this can be done a lot. So we're doing State of the Startups. You've had a bunch of startups recently. Why don't you tell us where you're at with them? How are you approaching them? What has the success rate been? Which I know all of them have been successful because I see the numbers. But why don't you get into the State of the Startup and rebooting this segment?
Yeah, guys, this will be fun. This will probably be fairly quick. This will probably be, I'm guessing, about a 15-minute episode or so. But um, before we get into where things are at, just some cool stuff Matt's talking. So I guess, first of all, to Matt's point, yes, he's right. I can't sit still. I struggle with it. It's true. But I'll tell you, it's also more than my inability to sit still, because I'll tell you what, guys, I'm actually not out there actively looking for new practices. I'm not. Like seriously, like I'm not. I'm not out there on these websites. I'm not on LoopNet looking at commercial real estate. I'm not, which at this point with us doing second gen spaces wouldn't be super helpful anyways. I'm not on these practice broker websites looking for what's available. I'm not scouring the Facebook groups. Every once in a while, I see something and it catches my eye, and that's what happened with the practice in Naples that we just signed an LOI on. But more often than not, what happens is my phone rings, and actually it's usually a text, because as Matt knows, it's way easier to text me than get me on the phone. But it's usually a text, hey doc, or hey Andrew, my practice broker or my real estate broker and I are on first name terms, so he doesn't have to do the whole ass kissing thing and say hey doc, but sometimes it's just even hey man, which is that informality that I enjoy. But hey man, got another practice opportunity if you're interested. Here it is. Give me a call, and I'll pick up the phone usually instantly and call him and see where it's at. And he's got me on speed dial when these opportunities come up. And so you guys know the saying, when it rains, it pours. For whatever reason, that's what seems to happen to me with these startups, is that I'll have a period where things are quiet and my phone's not ringing. And then all of a sudden, it's like every week or two, I'm getting another text or something about an opportunity. And so, in December of 2024, heading into December 2024, we're recording this the very beginning of April 2026. So a little bit over a year ago, less than a year and a half ago, we were at 4 practices. By July of 2025, we were at 10 practices. So we did 6 practices in just about 6 months there. And it was one of those things where, things just started falling in my lap. And when I have a good opportunity, yes, I'm not good at sitting still, but even more so, I'm not good at passing up on good opportunities. So it wasn't my plan to do 6 startups in 6 months. It's just that's how the cards fell. And then after that startup in January, after Fort Myers, that was number 10, we went months with radio silence. And I remember talking to Matt and saying, this is the first time in a long time that I've had no projects on the horizon. There's nothing I was working on, no leases I was working to sign, no LOIs, no places I was looking to bring in a new doctor for a new practice. It was kind of nice for a period, but I'll tell you, I did get a little bit antsy after a while, and I was like, okay, like what am I doing? Because to Matt's point, I agree. I enjoy the process of building new practices. I've also realized that my time is better leveraged when I'm building a new practice than when I'm trying to do day to day. even when it comes to like trying to tweak and optimize system. So first of all, I was talking to my partner, Dr. Sasha, my business partner, and we were at Alex Hormozzi's conference, which I'll talk a little more on another podcast here soon. But we're at the conference and we're talking about not optimizing things that don't need to be optimized. And I do feel like there is this necessity to be busy. And sometimes people are just like, oh, I've got to optimize that system. And like, don't get me wrong, systems are super important. And I do think your systems should all be as optimized as reasonably possible. But one, I don't think you should beat a dead horse. If you've got a good system in place, your time is probably not best spent trying to get that last 2 to 3% out of that system. Go work on a system that's at 50%. You're going to see a way bigger improvement there. Second of all, even if the system is at 50% and needs improved, is that system going to really move the needle for your group? And are you the only one who can improve that system? And if the answer is no to either of those questions, I mean, you probably want to have someone else working on that. So, you want to leverage your time for things that are going to have the biggest impact on the growth of your practice or growth of your dental group. And I've realized for me, that biggest impact that I can provide is finding new opportunities and getting new practices open. So anyways, long story short, I think we found, quote unquote, the first one of these practices was brought to me in like December of 2025. So we went a couple months with nothing. And now at the beginning of April of 2026, a few months later, we've got 4 in the pipeline. We've got one that we've got to sign lease on. We've got another that we're about to sign a lease, and we're buying the equipment. So a doc's moving. Most of these startups have been DSOs that have either shut down. We've had a couple. You guys have heard about it, I'm sure. A couple of these small to medium-sized DSOs have been going bankrupt and shutting down, or DSOs that have trimmed the fat. They're closing offices that are less profitable to kind of buoy up the profitability of the group. And so I'm just taking over these spaces. I've had a couple doctor-to-doctor ones. One doctor retired, and his practice just died. So we again bought his equipment. And we've had a couple docs that they've been so successful, they've moved to bigger spaces. And, don't get me wrong, I love these 12-op practices, but I can still do a lot with a 6-op practice, especially if there's no cost for build-out, no time, and all that good stuff. So anyways, all of that said, I found 4 more practices. We've got 1 lease signed. We've got another one we're getting ready to sign the lease in the APA. We've got another one we've got a signed LOI on that we're working on lease negotiations. And we've got a third that we've sent a fourth that we've sent an LOI that we're waiting for them to hopefully sign it. But we've got 2 practices that are for sure opening. I guess I don't like to use the word for sure. We've got 2 practices that are very likely opening by the end of May. So that'll put us at 12. We've got a third practice that should open sometime in like June to July. And then we've got a 4th practice that most likely, if things go well, will open in July or August. So we're going to go from 10 to 14 between May and July or August. So a couple months, we'll add 4 more practices. Any thoughts or questions on that before I talk about recent startups and revenue and all that good stuff?
I think everyone knows that you have a problem saying yes to good spaces. I mean, one time you said yes to a space just sitting by the pool and didn't know any of the stats, or like you knew them, but like you never saw it. So I think everyone knows that you're like, oh, there's an opportunity, I'm taking it.
Well, and I mean, Matt's kind of joking, but kind of not. Like, I do make decisions quickly. So I wouldn't say I'm uninformed on the decisions, but I'll say I know what the important details are. And so here's the questions I ask. One, obviously, what's the location? So I've had spaces brought to me that sound like great opportunities, but they're too damn close to another one of my practices. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense to cannibalize both practices competing for each other. I'm not scared of other dentists, but I don't want to compete against myself. So there's got to at least be a reasonable spread. The only exception is I've had a couple offices that are within maybe 10 to 15 minutes of each other. One's an implant only and one's a general. But even in those cases, I'd rather not even put those practices that close together. And I think moving forward, I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm looking for ideally at least like a 25 plus minute spread. If it's 25 plus minutes away, I think they're far enough away that I'm not going to really be cannibalizing the same patient base a whole lot. Second, by the same token, I don't want one random practice that's away from our strategical growth plan. So we did Tampa. We decided to expand in South Florida. So all these new practices are either somewhere in the general Tampa vicinity. We're getting a little farther out. We're getting up to about an hour outside the city, but somewhere generally speaking within the Tampa vicinity, or they're somewhere in South Florida. We're doing both the East and West Coast. But I had a practice up brought to me that was in Jacksonville. I mean, at some point we may expand there. But like, to me, we're focused on building out these two regions. I didn't want to add a third region that was completely separated, that now I've got to have people that can go up to that region and help out. It didn't make sense. So I don't look. I have a lot of docs that approach me asking about specific demographic reports and competition and ratio of dentist to population, all that good shit. I don't think about any of that. I don't run any demographic reports, nothing. All I think about is demographically or geographically, probably not demographic, geographically, does it make sense from our growth plan? Is it far enough away from other practices, but not so far away that's in a whole separate region that I'm not ready to expand to yet? That is like the main thing I'm looking at, and that's a very quick and easy answer. I don't care if it's on a main road. I don't care if it's a medical complex. I don't really care a whole lot what the building looks like or the inside looks like. I get it. Honestly, they'll send me video walkthroughs, and I'll just like skim through it super quick. I'm not that concerned. I want to know how many ops there are. So that's always my first question, how many ops? Because some of these have like 2 to 3 ops. I'm never doing that. Usually 5, I guess I've done a couple with 5, but usually those are usually implant-only offices. We're really trying to go for general offices that do a lot of implants moving forward. So like 6 is usually the minimum. I like 7 to 8 a lot more. We have a handful that have been 9 to 12 recently, which is obviously all the better. So I want to know how many ops it is. I guess I want to know the rent. I don't care that much, but it does make a difference. Being all around Florida, sometimes the rent is like 18 a square foot on the super low end, and sometimes on the high end it could be as high as 50. So I mean that does make a difference. I do kind of want to know that. I want to know the situation is there a current tenant? When are they leaving, or when have they last been there? I want to know, are they leaving equipment behind, or equipment that I could potentially buy? Like that is it's not like a deal breaker, but that definitely makes it a better deal if I know I'm getting some equipment in the space. That's about it. Those are all the questions I have. Like once those, was that 5 questions? Once those 5 questions are answered, like I'm usually ready to make a decision. And I'm to the point now where I'll usually make that decision like within an hour. I'm like, okay, yep, nope, sounds good. Let's do this. And then usually I'll tell my real estate guy, I'll say, hey, can you go back and can you see, like tell them I'm good with the number. Can I get 8 months of free rent? Or, hey, that number is a little high for market rate. And Marshall will tell me what market rate is for that area. Can we compromise a few dollars down and I'd still like some free rent or whatever. So usually I'll send him back to approach them. And here's what's key, guys. I heard someone say the faster you make decisions, the more successful you'll be in life. Or, it was I'm paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. I think it's so true, because these opportunities, man, if I wasn't so quick to make a decision, being the first one in the door to get kind of an offer, an LOI, all that stuff, it gives you such an advantage. Because now the landlord, the broker, like they're focused on you. They're focused on making a deal happen. They're less focused on finding somebody else to make a deal with. So it gives you a lot of leverage in that situation. If Marshall came to me and I was like, yeah, man, that sounds kind of cool. Let me think about it. Let me talk to my wife. Let me talk to my team. Why don't we reconnect? Like, why don't you text me or call me in a couple of weeks? We'll reconnect on it. I mean, there's a decent chance that space would be gone. And even if it wasn't already like quote unquote gone per se, there probably have been other people that have already come in and talked to them and put it all. So now I'm like throwing my hat in the ring with a bunch of other people who have already tried to wheel and deal and make deals, and they're less likely to negotiate with me and give me the terms I want and all that stuff. So if you're someone who wants to expand your group, I recommend you make really good relationship with a commercial real estate broker in your area. You make really good relationship with practice brokers in your area. You let them know that you're the person, you're going to make quick decisions, you're going to be easy to work with, you're going to follow through on your deals. And they'll get you at the top of their speed dial where you're having these amazing opportunities just kind of fall in your lap. And then you've got to move quickly on.
Hey guys, on demographics, you guys put a lot of weight on these. I will tell you from my experience as a marketer, that information, no matter what source you get it from, is rarely accurate. Rarely. Like, it just isn't. Like, it paints a picture, and the picture it paints, you start making decisions off of. I think Andrew's right. You shouldn't make a decision off of that.
Well, I will tell you guys, like as someone with practices kind of spread around Florida, demographics do make a difference to a certain extent with marketing. So like running similar ad sets with similar budgets on same platforms in different regions, even within like different areas of Tampa, I'll get sometimes some pretty drastically different results. So there is some truth. However, what I've realized is like honestly I never believed this, but it's
You
true.
shouldn't make location decision totally based on it. People are making a
Well,
lot of location decision based on just that.
Well, my point about that is if you're super concerned about demographics, then you're going to have trouble finding these you're going to have trouble growing quickly, you're going to have trouble finding these opportunities. The reason I've grown so quickly is because I'm not particular like almost at all about the demographics. And that's why like every opportunity as long as it checks those boxes, number of ops, far enough away, not in some random region that I don't want to expand to. Again, that's built. I want the offices built out and pretty much ready to go. I don't like a ton of construction. So like if the place is like falling apart, I may pass on it at this point because I know there'll be other opportunities that I don't have to put that much work and money into. But again, as long as those boxes are checked, I don't care about anything else. So almost every opportunity these guys bring to me, for me, is a good opportunity. Versus if I was like, ooh, like that's on the wrong side of that's on the wrong street, that's in a medical complex. I don't want that. And like docs get in their head like this is the avatar. It's like the same thing with the ideal patient bullshit. I don't buy that. I don't buy that rhetoric. I don't buy it for a practice. There's not like to me. There's not an ideal situation. There's an ideal approach, and the ideal approach is to invest a lot of money and great marketing, and no matter where you're at, you're going to grow that practice. Guys, multiple practices. Lately, the majority of the practices I've taken over have been failed practices, either DSOs that have went bankrupt or shut down certain locations, doctors who kind of let their practice die and basically were forced out or retired. Almost every one has been that, and every single one I've taken in and turned around on a dime. So like just because it's quote unquote a bad demographic, someone else couldn't do it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just have to have a better strategy. The other thing is I've went into areas that I know are better demographics. Maybe because I looked at it, in the past or whatever. I don't run these reports anymore, but like I know, hey, this area there's less doctors, there's less dentists, whatever it is. So I'm thinking it's going to be better, and it doesn't always happen that way, guys. So like just because you have a better ratio doesn't necessarily like the advertising that I normally do doesn't work as well, and then you've got to pivot. So, for instance, my Trinity location versus my others, there's not, for whatever reason, the social media ads don't work as well. The Facebook ads do okay. The Instagram ads are terrible. Almost every other location, my Instagram ads are some of my best ad sets. But Trinity, they don't get as much traction, and it has something to do with the population, probably the age, whatever it is. This is technically Newport Richey area for anyone familiar with Florida, but it's kind of close to this Trinity area. So anyways, I had to pivot, and I don't do a lot of mailers. I started doing a significant amount of mailers every month for that practice. We still do Facebook. I still do some Instagram, although I kind of flipped Instagram and mailers. Most of my other practices, Instagram is a majority, a big portion of my ad spend. This practice, it's a minority, and most other practices, if I do mailers, is very infrequently. And at that office, mailers are actually a big chunk of our marketing budget. So sometimes you've got to pivot strategies in different demographics, but it doesn't mean it's a bad demographic. It just means that particular strategy doesn't want to work there. So anyways, guys, we're getting on a little tangent. I know I said this was going to be a shorter episode, so I want to get into numbers and all that because I always share this with you guys on State of the Startup. So what have we been doing lately? So we just wrapped up March of 2026. February of 26 was a record-breaking revenue month for us. So we did 2.17 million in the month of February. That was our best month yet. March was our second best, or about tied for our second best. We did 2.08 million in March. So a little bit under 2.2 in February, a little bit under 2.1 in March. Since July of 2025 is when we took a big step forward. So heading into July of 25, our group at that point was at 9 locations, and we were doing about 1.3 to 1.4 million a month. In July, that's when everything just started to click. Some of our more recent startups started to pick up steam. Our more existing practices took another step forward. and we added Fort Myers, which has been our most successful startup yet. Again, they added 200 and some $1,000 in their first 30 days open, so that was huge. We did 1.95 million in July, so we added over $500,000 in revenue that month versus the previous month. Since July of 2025, we've averaged almost 2 million every single month. So it was like 195, 195. September was our biggest down month during that stretch. We had like, I think 167. So that was a downturn. And it was like 185. October was at that point was a record month. I think we did 2.06 or 7 or whatever. So I think that's now our third best month ever. November, December, short months, 1.95, 1.95. January, I think was right around 195. So like 3 months in a row, we did hit right around 195. So we're just shy of 2 million every single month there. February, again, record-breaking month, 2.17. March, 2.08. Our next step forward that I've got our sights set on, and I've got some kind of incentives tied in for some of my team members here, but our next jump forward we want to make is to 2.3 million. That's kind of our goal for our next kind of growth phase. We want to get up there and then kind of keep up there and keep pushing forward. We still have 10 practices. So, these numbers that we're doing, that's with 10 locations. Of our 10 locations, 6 of them are between 8 months and a little bit over a year old. So again, we did those 6 startups in 6 months. So that range of startups, that group of startups is kind of all at or nearing their 1 year mark. The other 4 practices, are at least 2.5 to, I guess, our oldest. So actually, this is kind of cool. Today is April 2nd. April 13th will be the 5-year anniversary for my first startup. So West Chase will turn 5 on April 13th, 2026. So at 5 years in business, again, the last, 8 months, we're averaging about 2 million a month, give or take, and we're starting to see that next phase of growth here. So right now our run rate, if you look at trailing 12, I think we're around 22.5, 23 million. So we're pretty soon here, we're going to be at maybe 22 million now. But within the next couple of months, as long as we maintain this pace, we should be at about a 24 to 25 million run rate over the trailing 12 months. Our EBITDA margins have actually been creeping back up. They kind of took a little bit of a dip during the startup phase. So we had been running around mid-20s. We dipped down to right around 20. I think we maybe even hit like 19.5 at one point. And now we're starting to creep back up. I think our last trailing 12 through the end of February, we were right about 22.5, 23% EBITDA. I think our total EBITDA for that 12-month period was like 4.6 million. So the goal is hopefully we add these 4 practices over the next 4 or 5 months. They start to pick up steam. Our other practices continue to kind of grow. And as we head into like Q3, Q4 this year, the goal is that we're doing like 3 million plus a month. That's where we'd like to be. The goal for 2026, kind of our major target is 27.6 million, which with the pace we're on right now, as long as we start to slowly kind of ramp up as we add these other practices, we should definitely hit that 27.6 goal. But kind of our bigger goal for the year is we'd love to crack 30 million. And I do think if we can get these next 4 offices up and going pretty quickly, like we have most of the recent startups, we can hit that 30 million goal. EBITDA margin at that point should be somewhere around between $6 and $6.5 million at the end of the year. So
I think this is a really good segment. I'm so happy we're bringing it back. I actually enjoyed it because it's really cool to document your journey. So, hey guys, thank you so much for subscribing, listening, and following, and joining us today. Please leave a review. It's something we really love to read. Thank you guys so much, and have a great day.